A junior accountant became the Mafia's most dangerous weapon. Penelope didn't carry a gun. She didn't threaten anyone. She didn't need to. With one laptop, one hidden back door, and a brain nobody at her firm respected, she froze $15 million of enemy money and destroyed the Moretti family's leverage without firing a single shot. Dominic Rossi had killers, soldiers, and lawyers, but none of them were as terrifying as her.
Bro, let us pause on this opening frame together. You and I. Look at this absolute madness. Dominic Rossi is holding a pen over a $4.2 billion contract,
trying to wash decades of mob blood off his family legacy. The tension in this room is insanely heavy. Suddenly, boom, the doors fly open. A terrified accountant stumbles in, clutching a red folder for dear life, straight up crying and begging him not to sign. You would expect the Don to snap, right? But Dominic just freezes. Absolute, ice-cold silence. Even his ruthless hitmen are visibly sweating. It leaves us with a brutal life lesson, guys. True power does not need to scream to make you listen. The most terrifying predators in the world win by staying dead silent and totally unpredictable. But before this gets soaked in blood, we have to talk about Penelope Hayes. In the absolutely cutthroat world of high finance, her survival strategy was just being totally invisible. These arrogant senior partners treated her like actual garbage, burying her desk under massive mountains of data just to crush her vibe. But here is the wild plot twist. By shoving her into the backwards end, these toxic bros unknowingly handed her the ultimate cheat code. Because nobody gave Penelope a second glance, they completely missed how sharply she was tracking their every single screw-up. It brings up a serious reality check for our own lives. The people we ignore and push into the darkest corners are usually the ones with the clearest view for the monsters hiding in the room. Penelope was not just glancing at spreadsheets. She was literally feeling the heartbeat of their massive lies. She tracked this filthy money through fake shell companies like an absolute boss. Just picture the aesthetic. A miserable Tuesday night, heavy rain slapping the glass of her cubicle. The office is pitch black except for the glow of her monitor. She runs one final check on the Aegis Capital buyout. On paper, Aegis is a financial titan, but underneath, they are a straight-up violent mob syndicate. Her innocent urge to do her job perfectly is about to drop her into a literal nightmare. It hits us with a tough life lesson today. Sometimes, simply doing the right thing with way too much heart is exactly what paints a massive, inescapable target on your own back. Stick with me on this one, you and I, because the absolute irony here is totally unhinged. Aegis Capital was just a custom-fitted suit hiding the bloody brass knuckles of the Rossi family. Dominic took over this brutal empire at 30, blowing 5 exhausting years trying to scrub his family name clean. This massive shipping deal was his ultimate ticket out, his one shot to ghost the feds forever. Meanwhile, miles away in the gloomy rain, an exhausted Penelope rubs her eyes and clicks open a hidden folder. Without even realizing the stakes, this quiet accountant just kicked the tiger straight in the teeth. It is a wild reminder that echoes through all our lives. The absolute mirth-shattering collisions always seem to go down on the quietest, most completely ordinary nights. We all naturally crave order, and Penelope had a brain absolutely wired for flawlessness. The camera zooms in hard as she spots something super sketchy. It starts as this tiny math error inside a cargo store for ships or docked over Italy. Any other burned-out analyst would have blamed the coffee crash and dipped. But Penelope feels the bad vibes deep in her bones. Muttering to herself in the pitch-black room, she digs into the logs and realizes these massive cargo ships are definitely not hauling sweaters. She smashes through their security walls and uncovers pure nightmare fuel. You can physically see the sheer panic lock her to the chair. It serves as a totally wild warning for all of us. The smallest, weakest little thread can always unravel the most insanely brilliant lie. The entire insane tragedy plays out right there on her monitor. Meridian Logistics is straight at a dead body, a hollow shell propped up by billions in toxic debt. And here is the absolutely unhinged twist. That massive debt belongs directly to the Moray family, the worst blood enemies of the Rossi syndicate. It is a flawlessly planned, silent execution. If Dominic signs his name, he swallows $2 billion of mob poison, guaranteeing he rots in federal prison forever. The second that ink dries, his empire goes up in smoke. Penelope sits there, totally paralyzed, watching the printer spit out a literal death warrant. It is a chilling thing to realize in life. The most brutal revenge rarely comes from a loaded weapon. Sometimes it is buried quietly in the fine print. Look at how Penelope is trembling under those harsh fluorescent lights. She is clutching 30 pages of pure financial destruction, breathing so heavily you can see her jacket shaking. This quiet woman just accidentally stumbled onto the front lines of a massive mafia war. At sunrise, she bolts into the glass office of Roland Sterling, this absolute clown of a boss who sweats expensive whiskey. She slams the red folder on his desk, begging him to pull the plug. But Roland just gives her this toxic, empty smirk, completely blind to her obvious panic. He refuses to even look at the math. We see this all the time in the real world, right? Blind pride will always stop an arrogant fool from noticing the massive fire that is already burning down his own house. You and I have to fully grasp the insanity here. Roland could not see the epic bloodbath coming because his brain was hijacked by a $50 million bonus. When sheer greed takes the wheel, survival instincts vanish. Penelope is in tears, jamming her shaking finger at the numbers, trying to expose the trap. She warns him that if the Mafia Don signs this garbage, he will hunt down everyone involved. But Roland just stands up, straightens his overpriced tie, and talks down to her like a clueless toddler. He calls her a nobody who does not understand real business. It reveals a seriously painful truth about human nature. Trying to save someone who refuses to acknowledge the storm is the absolute fastest way to drown right next to them. We have all dealt with toxic bosses, but Roland hits a whole new level of garbage. He demands she shred the evidence, or he will personally nuke her career. As he struts away, Penelope is frozen in pure panic. The camera locks onto her terrified eyes. She is at a brutal crossroads. She can scurry back to her safe desk and wait for the mob hits to start, or she can finally shatter every rule she has ever followed. The exact millisecond she snatches up that red folder, she is pure, unfiltered hype. Her frantic dash toward the private elevator is fueled by the raw adrenaline of someone finally fighting back. Here is the harsh reality check we all need. Doing the right thing is almost never safe, and it usually demands a terrifying burst of pure, reckless defiance. The 50th floor penthouse feels like a super villain temple designed to make you feel tiny. Sitting at the massive marble table is Dominic Rossi. Bro does not look like a regular street thug. He carries this heavy, dark energy with dead eyes and a bespoke suit that screams untouchable power. But it is not the clothes making the room so suffocating. It is his totally terrifying, unblinking calmness. He knows he holds the power of life and death over every suit in that room. He just sits there, breathing slow and steady, like an apex predator bee waiting for the perfect second to strike. It drops a super dark truth bomb on us. The absolute most dangerous threats you will ever face. Zombies does not throw tantrums or scream. They just sit there, staring you down in absolute silence. Looming behind Domitic like a literal gargoyle is Leo Cavallo, his ultimate ride or die enforcer. If Domitic is the brain, Leo is the Sledgehammer, rocking are covered in scars from their bloody come up. Across the table, the CEO of Meridian, Richard Croft, is drowning in flop sweat. Even flanked by his overpriced lawyers, Croft is completely failing to look tough. You can see his hands vibrating out of control. His voice is actually cracking under the insane stretch as he desperately promised the money that is clean. He is basically begging for his life, just praying he gets to walk out of this skyscraper. The life lesson is plastered all over his terrified face. You can buy the most expensive suits in the world, but your shaking hands will always expose your deepest fears. Let us zoom in on this moment, because this is where Dominic's killer instincts take over. He locks those dead shark eyes onto Croft. Growing up in a mob family, Dominic was trained to spot the tiny micro-expressions of pure panic. He instantly clocks the nosblur's way Croft shifts in his chair, and the suspicious discounts that make zero business sense. Dominic drops his voice to a raspy whisper, and the entire room turns to ice. Croft starts moaning, falling apart, and sweat bucket and swearing the audit is legit. Beside him, Leo leans over and drops a dark threat in fluent Italian. It is an absolute masterclass, giving us a crucial survival rule today. No matter how much crazy money is sitting on the table, you never, ever ignore the loud screaming of your own gut. Let me set the scene, because this opening shot is absolute cinema. Dominic is looking deadly, muttering in Sicilian to justify this insane gamble. Bro is desperate for these shipping ports to wash his crime syndicate clean. Terrified the old bosses will drag legacies back into the gutter. He genuinely thinks he is a tragic hero. Then the director hits us with a sharp cut to the lobby. Penelope is an absolute wreck, sprinting for the elevator. The contrast is perfect. Two totally different worlds, hurtling straight at each other. It teaches us something super real about how the universe operates. You can try to map out every single detail of your perfectly planned future, but fate will always step in and introduce you to the exact person you never saw coming. Today, you and I are stepping into a masterclass on psychological pressure. The camera lingers on Penelope, an exhausted auditor trapped in an elevator, climbing 50 flights. She is gasping for air, hugging a red folder to her chest like a bulletproof vest. The wildest part is she is muttering about losing her health insurance, completely oblivious she is walking into a cartel stronghold. It is hilarious until the dark reality hits you. Corporate culture has scrambled her brain so badly that she is more afraid of getting fired than getting taken out by the mob. We have all been crushed by the daily grind, but it teaches a real life lesson. No matter how much you stress over your career, a fancy job title will never protect you when real danger finally knocks on your front door. The camera sits on the heavy hitters outside the boardroom.
These guys are not average security. They are the terrifying physical extension of a
ruthless mafia boss. Hands resting near their jackets in an unspoken promise of violence. Penelope bursts out, completely drowning in panic, and tries to shove past them over an accounting emergency. The guards cross their arms, legitimately laughing at him at this fragile number cruncher, trying to muscle into their underworld. They warn her to back off, but she honestly believes her spreadsheets mean something here. It is brutal to watch, but it hits you with a massive truth bomb. Believing your own illusions might feel safe, But a comfortable lie will never shield you from the harsh, violent realities of the actual world. The shot shifts to her hesitation. Penelope is frozen, staring at those massive doors, running the math in her head. If Dominic signs that merger, he walks right into a federal trap. The guards give one final warning before the biggest guy grabs her arm, squeezing hard enough to leave bruises. But check out her reaction. Fear usually makes people freeze, but sometimes it pushes you past your limits. Penelope spent her whole life letting angry bosses walk all over her. Not today. Riding a wave of pure adrenaline, she swings that red folder and smashes it directly into the guy's nose. You can actually hear the bone crack. It is a wildly intense scene, holding a raw truth. You cannot always politely ask for respect. Sometimes you just have to plant your feet and matey in it you can fight and matter back to finally break the cycle. Before the guard can draw his piece, Penelope throws her weight against the wood. The massive doors crash open, echoing like a gunshot. Everyone freezes. Right at the head of the table sits Dominic Rossi, looking exactly like a dark king on his throne. His pen hovers over the signature line, but bro does not even blink at the sudden noise. His nerves are so entirely deadened that it is scary to watch. He slowly raises his hollow eyes to find Penelope in the doorway, soaked from the rain and clutching that bent folder. The rival executives are losing their minds in panic, but Dominic's in absolute silence. It gives us an incredible life lesson about control. True power never yells or freaks out when things go sideways. It stays quiet, observes the chaos, and calmly decides what to do next. Let's pause here, because the psychology of this next beat is wild. The rival executive goes totally pale as Penelope screams across the room, begging Dominic not to sign. Instantly, 4 security guys pull silenced pistols and aim at her chest.
In order to give the nod to end her life.
And what does Penelope do? She closes her eyes. She did her at her job and is perfectly ready to catch a bullet for a corporation that does not care if she exists. It is tragic, but it highlights a painful reality. Whenever you stop valuing your own worth, there will always be someone waiting to take advantage of you. Letting go of your self-respect, just as the worst people full permission to step in and write your story for you. The camera pushes close on her face. She holds her breath, waiting for the gunshot, totally convinced it is game over. But instead of a bullet, a voice cuts through the heavy air. It is not an angry shout. It is a soft, terrifying whisper from a man who decides who gets to breathe tomorrow. Dominic drops his pen, and that click echoes across the marble like a judge, bringing down a gavel. He stands up, showing off his massive height, ignoring the weapons. He softly tells his men to back off, and they instantly drop her arms like she is on fire. It is a brilliant piece of character building that hits us with a solid truth. You can always spot who holds the real power in any situation. They are the other guys who never have to raise their voice to make people listen. Watch how the shadows shift when Dominic tells Croft to shut his mouth. Not even looking at the guy, it is pure intimidation. His dark eyes stay locked on Penelope, scanning her ruined shoes and shaking hands. He paces around the massive table with the deadly grace of a tiger cornering its meal. You can feel his presence crushing the air out of her lungs. He stops inches away, smelling of cold rain and expensive cologne. When he asks her name, his voice is a low, rumbling threat. Penelope swallows her panic and even stammers that she is a forensic auditor. Stick with me, because this tense moment drops a heavy life lesson. We are taught that honesty is the best policy. But sometimes, handing the flat truth to the wrong person is the most dangerous move you can possibly make. Dominic leans in, softly mentioning her boss guaranteed the books were spotless. Here, Penelope makes a fatal mistake. Running on adrenaline, she snaps back, calling her boss a lazy fraud. You can feel the oxygen vanish. Insulting a king his face is begging for a bullet. The guards grip their weapons, waiting for the kill order. But Dominic does something terrifying. He smiles. It is a dark smirk that makes him look insanely dangerous. He asks if she is totally sure about her math. Penelope, finding comfort in her numbers, nods yes. It is a wild piece of irony and a hard lesson. Being incredibly good at your job is usually a major flex. But showing off those genius skills to the ruthless underworld might just make you their permanent prisoner. The camera drops to her shaking fingers as she is pressing that red folder right into his chest. Dominic calmly takes the paperwork. She tells him to check page 12 for fake shipping schedules and page 14 for the massive hidden debt. For 30 agonizing seconds, nobody dares to breathe. The only sound is the rain hitting the glass. We watch Penelope watching him. She catches the exact second his razor-sharp mind connects the dots. She sees the flash of betrayal in his eyes, followed by the cold promise that somebody will lose their life tonight. It is a brilliant scene, leaving us with a heavy lesson. People say the truth will set you free. But handing a dangerous truth to a highly violent person means you are now permanently tied to their dark world, whether you actually like it or not. Stick with me, because this is the second time the power dynamic flips. A shadow so dark crosses Dominic's face that Penelope physically steps back. The boss just realized he got played, and the room freezes. He slowly closes the folder. Across stable ball, Croft is shaking, eyeing the exit. Dominic turns to his main enforcer. His voice is completely dead, stripped of all emotion, as he orders him to lock the doors. That metal deadbolt sliding into place sounds exactly like a coffin lid slamming shut. The rival lawyers try to bolt, but the guards violently throw them down. It gives us a brutal reality check. You can spend your entire life chasing quantity, money, and status, but when the heavy doors finally lock and the consequences arrive, all your cash cannot buy your way out. Dominic picks up the contract, staring at Croft, who is struggling to breathe. In a quiet voice, Dominic brings up the hidden cartel debt planted for the feds to find. Croft loses his mind. He starts crying and screaming and pointing at Penelope, claiming she faked the numbers. Look at Dominic, no shouting, no wild movements. He simply rips that massive stack of paper in half, and then again. The pieces flutter onto the table like snow. He never blinks as he watches the sobbing executive calmly ordering his guards to drag Croft to the basement. This leaves us with a golden rule. The loudest person in the room is always covering up their own hidden weakness, but the quietest person is the one who actually holds the true power. Let us look at this chaos together and see if Penelope actually won anything. Croft is screaming his lungs out as massive units drag him through the door, totally ignoring his thrashing. In 5 seconds, the room clears, leaving only the boss Dominic, his guards, and our girl Penelope. Her adrenaline crashes hard. Her eyes practically turn to jelly. The crazy irony. She just saved a literal Mafia emperor, but doomed those men to a basement of horrors. She starts panicking, rambling about going back to her desk job. But his dangerously low voice freezes her dead. You cannot step into the pitch black and expect to just stroll back out. The simple truth of life is that once you cross your great heavy moral line to save your own skin, your old life is gone forever. She belongs to him now. Dominic closes the frame. Dominic closes the distance, and his towering frame casts a shadow that completely swallows her up. Penelope tilts her head way back just to meet his unreadable eyes. He reaches out, and she instantly flinches, but instead of hurting her, his huge hand softly straightens her glasses, wiping a tear from her cheek. This is a dangerously calculated move. He is literally rewiring her nervous system, pouring the foundation for a massive trauma bond. He whispers about how she saved his empire, asking if she honestly thinks he would let her go back to spreadsheets. She stammers a weak excuse about needing to feed her cat. The lesson here is brutal. When a starving shark corners you in the freezing ocean, bringing up your pet goldfish will never save your life. Let us unpack this frame by frame. Watch the shadows shift as that terrifying, quiet smile creeps back onto his face. Dominic speaks with the cold rhythm of a judge handing down a sentence. He points out that her boss was ready to let him walk blindly into a federal trap, a fatal mistake that always demands blood. But Penelope actually risked her own neck for a stranger. He leans in close, locking her into a paralyzing freeze, and casually whispers that she is his property. Now her logic completely shatters. She stares into his eyes and finds zero hesitation. Panicking, she babbles about her apartment lease, clinging to a normal reality that is already dead. The lesson here is haunting. The strongest cages are not made of heavy steel. They are built at the exact second we surrender our free will. Just linger on the painful irony of this moment. Penelope is literally just an accountant, and now she is desperately trying to set polite boundaries with an apex predator. She clings to reason, her voice shaking as she insists she is an independent person. Dominic answers with quiet, suffocating dominance. He shifts his massive shoulders to block out the light, physically erasing her illusion of safety. Then he drops the heavy hammer. He calmly explains the $2 billion hole she just ripped into his criminal syndicate. He turns the hard truth into a weapon, sending her straight into clinical shock as all the blood drains from her face. The life lesson here is harsh but real. Logic is a completely useless shield. Stand in front of a violent nature that only respects raw power. The camera captures a tragic shift in her body language the second the adrenaline fades. Penelope is no longer just an observer. She is bleeding bait in a shark tank. Before her panic peaks, the heavy door swings open and Leo steps inside. Look at the absolute void in his eyes as he wipes fresh blood off his expensive gold watch. The man is a tailored nightmare. He flatly reports that their prisoner finally broke and confessed to a rat inside the firm. The truth hits her like a physical punch. Her own manager, Roland, is the scumbag who sold them all out. The invisible trap pulls tight around her neck. It teaches a heartbreaking lesson about blind trust. Sometimes the purse smiling warmly at you is the exact snake who threw you to the hungry lions. Watch the horror flood her face as the pieces click together. Roland set her up for the slaughter, using her quiet nature to hide his crimes. Right next to her, Dominic hums with terrifying, cold rage. He starts firing off lethal commands to his men, but then, driven mad by the thought of her cat starving alone, Penelope does something insanely reckless. She reaches out and tightly grabs the arm of the literal Mafia boss. It is a desperate attempt to hold on to any shred of control. Normally, a kingpin like him would snap her wrist without looking. Instead, Dominic freezes. The monster stops moving entirely, anchored by her shaking fingers. The lesson here is fascinating. Exposing your raw vulnerability will often stop a seasoned predator far faster than a loaded weapon ever could. Focus closely on his eyes right here. As he looks down at her, some small fingers gripping his dark suit, you can see his mindset shift. She is no longer an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. She is officially his personal property. In a stroke of psychological brilliance, he commands his men to go retrieve her cat. He is forging invisible, heavy chains of dependency. When one of his kill questions why they are saving a pet during a bloody gang war, Dominic just stares at him. The temperature in the room instantly drops 10 degrees. Questioning the boss is basically asking for a bullet. His silent, venomous glare irradiates complete suffocating control. The truth of this brutal world is simple but profound. True power never actually has to yell to make a room hold its breath in terror. The criminal king has drawn a line in the sand. As his enforcer backs away, Dominic does something truly twisted. He slowly takes off his heavy wool coat and drops it over her shaking shoulders. To her panicked brain, it feels like a warm blanket of safety.
But look at the framing here. This is a predator physically marking his territory. He is drowning her
In his scent, cutting her off from the normal world she used to know. His massive hand locks onto her arm like an iron vice, steering her down toward the underground bunker. Out of the shadows, heavily armed mercenaries step into the harsh light. She has crossed the final threshold. The Mafia world has completely swallowed her whole. The lesson here is chilling. Sometimes the very jacket keeping you warm is the exact net designed to trap you forever. The sound design alone tells the entire story. Her cheap office shoes squeak against the cold concrete, a tiny noise of civilian panic surrounded by silent killers. The camera follows them right up to a row of black armored vehicles. Dominic pushes her into the middle vehicle, sealing them inside. The heavy locks engage with a sickening click. Just like that, she is buried alive inside a dark leather-lined vault of bulletproof glass. It is a gorgeous, rolling prison. As the convoy speeds out into a violent city thunderstorm, Penelope sits there, completely frozen by the crushing weight of her fear. She grips his oversized coat like a drowning woman holding onto driftwood. The lesson of fate is incredibly dark. Survival often forces us to cling to the exact monster who threw us into the storm. Stick with me here, because the psychological whiplash is insane. Just a few hours ago, her biggest headache was a broken spreadsheet. Now, she is trapped inside a moving tank with organized killers. Dominic quietly watches her brain start to shut down from the stress. He pours a dark scotch and holds the heavy glass out to her. His voice sounds like a soft suggestion in him, but his eyes give an absolute command. She takes it. The burning liquor scorches her throat, physically forcing her racing heart to slow down. This is an absolute masterclass in dark manipulation. When we are terrified, our bodies instinctively accept whatever comfort the person in charge decides to offer. The reality is grim. Trauma makes us terrifyingly easy to guide. When you are drowning, you will swallow anything just to catch your breath. The frame captures the pure agony of her trying to negotiate her way out. She is literally a lamb trying to bargain with a wolf who owns the forest. She demands to know when she can leave, desperately clinging to the ghost of the normal life. Dominic just leans closer, invading her personal space with the crushing gravity that only a real villain has. His hand reaches up, slowly brushing a wet strand of hair away from her face. It is a deeply intimate, violating move. His voice drops into a low rumble as he performs verbal surgery on her mind, cutting away every single connection she has left to her old apartment. He completely shatters the hope that she is ever going back. The truth is, denial is a wonderful painkiller, but it always wears off the exact second the cold blade hits the bone. He looks into her eyes, practically reclassifying her as his personal property. He promises to keep her safe, but the invisible price tag is absolute submission. You and I are watching the exact moment the dark roots of a trauma bond break through the soil. The massive vehicle pulls up to his status, a floating glass fortress in the sky. He presses his hand to a scanner to unlock the doors, like a paranoid king locking away his stolen treasure. The architecture is designed to make her feel small. It is a display of dirty money. Thick glass frames the violent lightning outside, while expensive stone floors push heat into her freezing feet. He is showing her that he controls the actual weather inside her life now. The lesson is simple. A golden cage is always a prison. Guys, look at this absolute madness. We are watching Penelope's brain literally crash completely while surrounded by stupidly expensive flexes. She is running purely on fumes and survival instinct. Meanwhile, Dominic is barking out orders like a psycho, locking down every door to build her the ultimate gilded cage. He tells her to go wash up and wait, hitting her with that terrifying warden energy. Her battery is at 0, so she just goes numb, and she trails behind a massive dude with a heavy rifle, floating down a hallway packed with priceless art like a ghost in a villain's museum. But honestly, here is the harsh reality of survival. Sometimes, going total NPC and following the rules is your only shot at waking up tomorrow. We get this heavy shot of Penelope standing under boiling hot water in a massive marble shower. She is scrubbing her skin until it is literally red and raw. She thinks she can wash off the mob grime, but that stain is baked in forever. In that dead silence, the absolute absurdity hits her. She is just an average numbers girl, but she somehow broke a global crime syndicate. She steps out of the steam and sees navy blue silk pajamas on the vanity. And boom, here is the craziest plot twist. They fit her perfectly. The lesson here is brutal. True vulnerability is not just being exposed. It is realizing the final boss was tracking your every move way before you even knew you were playing the game. Picture the setup here, because the shadows in this living room are sharp and nasty. Having custom silk pajamas ready at 2 in the morning proves one insane fact. The Don has been stalking her for months. The second she puts them on, she is basically surrendering to his world. But it also ditches her boring office disguise and forces her to boss up. She walks out and catches him pacing. The expensive suit is gone. He is just rocking a dark shirt, flexing all that scarred muscle of a guy who survives by throwing hands. The corporate boss mask is off, and the actual monster is out to play. You and I need to remember a scary truth. When the predator drops the disguise, you better pray you are not the only one locked in the room. The camera zooms right into his eyes the second she hits the light, and woo, he is not even trying to hide the absolute hunger in his stare anymore. It is this dark obsession he finally let off the leash, and the heavy weight of that look vaporizes any courage she had left. She tries to fake it, crossing her arms and demanding a logical explanation like a tough negotiator. Dominic does not care. His massive hand locks onto her shoulder, shoving her down into a leather chair with the ice-cold precision of a dirty cop. He drops the polite act and drops a bomb. Heavily armed hitmen just kick down her apartment door. The lesson is rough. Guys, sometimes the honest answers we demand turn out to be the exact horror show we are running from. Pause the video right here, because this is exactly where the trap locks down for good. He leans in close, dropping the horrifying fact that his assassins were waiting by her bed. But before she can even scream, he softly adds that her cat is safe and currently bullying his security guards. That crazy whiplash of pure relief completely wrecks her last emotional wall. Penelope just loses it. She is sobbing uncontrollably as the sheer weight of almost getting flatlined hits her all at once. And who is standing right there to catch her? The Mafia boss himself. It exposes such a toxic truth about the human brain.
When the guy who literally built your nightmare becomes the only safe place you've left on earth,
You are never walking back into your old life. Watch the body language here, because we are looking at a textbook trauma bond forming live in high definition. Wraps its massive hands around her tiny wrists. It looks safe, right? Wrong. He is pressing down just to enough to remind her who holds the leash. He forces her chin up, locks onto her terrified eyes, and promises to wipe the entire Moretti crime family off the map in 6 months. He is making himself her ultimate violent savior. After years of being totally ignored, Penelope whispers that she is just a nobody accountant. But here is the twisted psychology of it.
A dangerous
Predator always needs a shiny prize.
cause extraordinary. Do not get it twisted. She's only building her up, so
Stick with me, because this power dynamic is getting wild. Look how smooth he is moving right now. This is the part where he pumps up her ego, which is honestly the sneakiest form of grooming. He starts hyping up her genius neurons brain, pointing out how she saw money trails that top lawyers missed. Penelope tries to stand her ground, using his first names to show she is not some fragile toy. His eyes immediately snap to hers, and he calls her an empire builder. It is a masterclass in manipulation. He tosses a heavy platinum card on the glass table, making her the head boss of his shadow company. He offers her a huge team and total freedom. Sometimes they will hand you the keys to the kingdom just to make sure you never actually want to walk out of the cage. We really need to unpack the crazy calculations happening in Penelope's head right now. She is staring at that shiny platinum card, weighing all the garbage she took from her awful old boss against this massive, intoxicating rush of real authority. She is basically looking at a dark throne built on dirty money. And the craziest part? She does not bolt. Her survival mode flips the script. She lifts her chin, voice still shaking just enough to prove she is terrified, and tells the mob boss that she has rules. Dominic just hits her with this devastating, broken smile. He literally looks like a starving wolf watching his dinner walk straight into his mouth. Name them, he whispers. In life, the absolute brightest fires usually burn inside the cages we willingly lock ourselves into. The camera catches him staring with that unblinking intensity of a guy who just found water in the desert. He asks for her demands, using smooth Italian nicknames that basically act like velvet ropes tying her down. The irony here is off charts. She is chilling in silk pajamas, locked deep inside a billionaire mafia fortress, actually thinking a piece of platinum gives her the upper hand. But for the very first time ever, she refuses to back down. She takes a deep breath and drops her first absolute rule. She is not cooking his books. If he wants to wash dirty cash, keep it off her clean servers. It is a huge power play, but the lesson is scary. Drawing a firm line in the sand with a total monster only shows him exactly where he needs to step next. Her voice echoes across a totally silent room. She straight up refuses to catch federal charges for a crime family. Dominic just leans back into the leather sofa and crosses his massive arms. He is completely relaxed, hiding a smirk, because her little illusion of being in control is the most entertaining thing he has seen in ages. He just agrees, no hesitation. She gets the clean corporate side, he keeps the dirt, but then she drops her second demand and you can practically see the power tripping her out. She demands the green light to fire all the lazy Neapo babies in his finance department so she can build her own ruthless squad. His eyes light up with this dangerous amusement. Give the quiet kid a little bit of authority, and they will always reveal their villain era. She pitches this crazy power grab as just basic survival. She looks right into the eye guys of a literal killer and tells him she needs complete control to keep his operations out of federal prison. The tragedy is that she is chaining their fates together by her own choice. Dominic drops his voice to a deadly whisper and invades her personal space. He drags his thumb right across her jawline, a super calculated move that sends a massive shiver down her spine. It is his way of saying her new power only exists because he signed off on it. She freezes the second he touches her. But then, totally wrecking the spicy tension, she demands premium wet food for her cat. A real, genuine laugh bursts out of this untouchable mob boss. A tiny spark of humanity can still crack the darkest shadows. You can feel the shock of that real, human laugh bouncing off the penthouse glass. But before the Don can even process this weird soft spot she unlocked, the heavy steel elevator doors slide open. His top hitter, Leo, stomps into the room, looking ready, Feeny. But check this out. Cradled in his massive tattooed arms is Penelope S. 20-pound orange cat. He glares at his boss. Deadpan announces that the cat just bit one of their armed guards and drops the absolute unit onto the expensive rug. Penelope gasps and hits her knees. The cat runs right to her, purring like wrenching quaint chains moito against her shaking arm. We will always cling to these tiny pieces of our normal past, hoping they act as an anchor when the insane reality of the present tries to drag us under. Bro, that cozy piece absolutely shatters into pieces. You've got to see this. Leo locks eyes with the boss, and every ounce of human warmth just deletes itself from Dominic's face. The charming dude is gone, replaced by the dead stare of a literal apex predator. Leo drops a total nuke of an update. Sterling slipped the trap before the strike team could even kick his door in. And it gets way worse. Sterling downloaded the entire master blueprint of Dominic's legitimate empire. Every clean business and tax shell is sitting on one flash drive. Now he is selling it to the Moretti family. Look, here is a hard lesson for us to swallow. The ghosts we refuse to bury will always come back with a match to burn our whole house down. Just look at Penelope right now, because the sheer panic she is processing is insane. The silence in that penthouse is thick enough to choke on. If the rival mob gets those financials, it is totally game over. We are talking federal audits, frozen cash, and the whole syndicate dissolving overnight. Dominic would be dragged right back into the blood clawing us to charge. He drops his voice to this absolute nightmare whisper, demanding to know where the deal is happening. Leo looks sick. Admitting completely blind. Sterling and swish for $50 million. It hits you with a heavy truth. True helplessness is sitting in a quiet room where all your money and power literally cannot save you. The exact millisecond that cash clears, the deal location gets beamed straight to the enemy. But hold up, watch how the vibe of the room totally flips. Penelope stands up, rocking her silk pajamas like an absolute suit of armor. All that insane corporate brainpower her old boss tried to crush is suddenly weaponized to protect the mob boss holding her. She steps right between these two violent dudes, demanding the Swister's routing details. When Leo barks that it is untraceable, she shuts him down completely. She drops the tea that her arrogant old boss never changes his security keys, and she demands the fastest computer in the building. It proves something important. Our biggest flex usually hides inside the exact same skills the rest of the world tried to tell us were worthless. Dominic does not even blink. He just points straight at the black computer PD sitting on a frosted glass desk. Penelope absolutely bolts for it, with this massive orange cat rotting right behind her like a tiny bodyguard. She drops into the leather chair, cracking her knuckles with the dark energy of a literal hitman. Her hands are a total blur across the keyboard, ripping into a root command terminal. These two lethal mobsters just stand frozen then, their faces lit up by the glowing green code on the screen. She smirks and whispers that the firewall is a total joke, and you see the fear totally leave her eyes. We need to remember this. Nobody is ever going to just hand you real power. You only despise it that you stop running away and decide to swing the weapons you already have. The camera zooms in on her face, catching the exact second her desks turn into a literal bazooka. She casually mentions she built a secret backdoor into those servers years ago, just so she could work from home. In 3 flat minutes, she breaks the global banking system. She locks dead on to that $15 million supposed to ruin them. Dominic leans in, asking if she can just pull the plug on the transfer. Penelope turns her head super slow with this wicked villain-era smile. She whispers she is about to do something way more savage. She is tossing all that cash straight into a flagged cartel account that Interpol's talks 24/7. It is a huge reality check. The quietest people always hold the sharpest knives, and brain power beats muscles every single time. Today, you and I are going to unpack this masterpiece of this together. Penelope just slams the enter key, and the screen flashes a massive red compliance hold. With one single click, she freezes $15 million of enemy money without throwing a single punch. Leo is paralyzed, watching this quiet girl financially nuke the biggest rivals. She spins her chair around, voice totally iced out, and announces that Sterling is officially cooked. Then, look at Dominic. His eyes go pitch black with this twisted, obsessive respect. He leans over, trapping her against the desk, and whispers that she is the deadliest weapon. He owns it is wild, but here is the raw truth. Sometimes, the only people who finally see your true worth are the exact same monsters you should be running from. The video cuts to the next morning with a total vibe shift. Golden sunlight fights through dark storm clouds pouring into her massive guest room. But bro, it is dead silent. It is that kind of rich, expensive isolation that will quietly drive you insane. Penelope sits up, pushing messy hair out of her face as reality hits her like a freight train. She just permanently crossed over in the Mafia underworld. Her situation proves a bitter point. The second you stop making yourself small for the losers who ignore you, you risk selling your soul to the villains who actually hype you up. A sharp knock suddenly wrecks the quiet. She yanks the blanket up like a shield, but the door pops open. Clara, this intense woman carrying a mountain of expensive fabrics, walks right in without asking. The director walks us through this haunting glow-up sequence. Clara drops the hammer, stating she needs battle armor, not cute clothes. For 2 agonizing hours, she treats Penelope like a blank canvas, measuring every shaking inch. Penelope spent her life drowning in baggy sweaters, praying nobody would look at her. But when she steps in front of the mirror, she gasps. She is strapped into a custom midnight blue palette that fits with terrifying perfection. Her hair's sleek and locked down. You are watching a total psychological rewrite happening live. The lesson in the scene is dark but real. If you wear a heavy mask of boss energy long enough just to hide how terrified you are, that mask will eventually become your actual face. There is no going back from that point. Let us look at this piece by piece. Then together, she slides into black stilettos, dropping that scared girl act to become an absolute weapon. Dominic is waiting by the elevator looking lethal in a black suit and a red tie. When he sees her, the guy literally stops breathing. The camera catches him scanning every sharp angle of her new hyaluronic burn with crazy narcissist energy, checking out his masterpiece. Penelope catches her breath, tragically confusing her good terror for romantic butterflies. He murmurs, but she looks breathtaking, sounding more like a threat than a compliment. And he slowly holds out his arm. She whispers, but she is ready, sliding her hand into the trap. The harsh truth here stings. Sometimes a cage is so beautifully decorated that we willingly lock the door ourselves. The camera cuts to the street. They do not frame this like a business meeting. It is shot exactly like a military strike. 3 armored trucks screech to a halt outside this massive glass skyscraper. Dominic steps out, and the crowd parts like the sea. Penelope steps out next to him, surrounded by guards holding actual rifles. The block erupts into nervous whispers. They ride up to the 60th floor in total silence. Dominic does not bother knocking. He straight up kicks the heavy mahogany doors wide open. Inside sits a squad of finance bros, with that snake Gregory Trent lounging at the head of the table. This exposes a dark reality about human hierarchy. All this corporate power is totally fake. We just pretend it is real until a literal monster walks in with a bigger gun. You remember Trent, right? That smug corporate bro who laughed at Penelope months ago. The entire boardroom absolute flatlines the second Dominic walks in. Dominic drops a greeting so cold it could shatter ice, forcing a sweating Trent out of the boss chair. Watch Dominic's body language closely, and he does not take the seat. Instead, he pulls the leather chair back and offers it to Penelope. She takes a Sraveth, wearing that suit like iron armor, and drops into the head of the table. Dominic stands right behind her, digging his hands deep into her shoulders. Do not get it twisted. He is not giving her emotional support. He's just branding his territory in front of the wolves. Here is a massive pro tip. Always watch the hands, because they instantly tell you who actually owns the room. Check out this masterclass in psychological warfare. Dominic stares down a row of terrified suits, crowning Penelope as the new chief financial officer. He announces that a single word from her is a direct order from him, daring anyone to flinch. The silence is heavy, but bro, Trent just cannot help himself.
His bruised ego
short-circuits his survival instincts. He sneers across the table,
calling her a useless junior auditor. It is painful watching a desperate man dig his own grave live.
We know loud arrogance is usually a cheap costume for deep insecurity. But wounded pride taught in a room, Maccabees is a fatal mistake. The lesson here is ridiculously simple. Sometimes the smartest move you can make to stay alive is just keeping your mouth shut. Picture this absolute chaos. You can literally taste the tension choking this boardroom. Leo is casually leaning against the locked door, grinning like a shark that just smelled a drop of blood. Dominic is gripping Penelope so tight he looks like a loaded weapon ready to snap. But pause the video right here. Look at Penelope. She reaches up, taps his hand, and whispers that she has got this. In 1 second, the scared Starhouse goes full attack dog. She hooks her tablet to the projector and locks dead eyes straight on Trent. With a chillingly smooth voice, she asks to review his real estate deals. Boom, boom. A giant spreadsheet blasts onto the wall, and Trent crumbles into a sweaty mess. The lesson here is simple. Never pick a fight with the quiet person who spent years reading the fine print while you were busy running your mouth. You and I have probably both made the mistake of sleeping on the quiet person in the room. Trent is finding that out the hard way. Penelope swipes her screen, flexing his $40 million purchase of 6 New Jersey warehouses. On paper, it looks totally legit, but then she just dismantles the fake tax numbers, exposing his sketchy shell company. Trent is sweating bullets, stammering about normal business moves. Then she drops absolute nukes, halfway snappers, like when she reveals the shell company belongs to his own brother-in-law. Bro literally swiped $12 million. The whole room gasps. The life lesson is glaringly obvious. If you are going to steal from a literal mafia syndicate, never use a cheap trick that a tired accountant can rip apart before she even finishes her morning coffee. Watch closely how the other executives basically launched their chairs by Brian backward to get away from Trent. He is totally cooked, and nobody wants his mess ruining their expensive suits. Penelope slowly stands up, leaning over that fancy mahogany table like an absolute predator cornering its dinner. She looks right through his soul, coldly dropping the fact that he robbed the deadliest crime family in New York with a scam a college freshman could beat. Trent is drenched in sweat, begging Dominic for his life, swearing the numbers are fake. Dominic does not even blink or raise his voice. He simply murmurs the name of his muscle. Leo violently yanks Trent from his chair. Life changes incredibly fast. One minute you think you own the boardroom, and the next you are just literal garbage waiting for the cleanup crew. The camera lingers on Leo as this sick laugh escapes his chest. He tells the terrified room they are about to see exactly what $12 million buys. Trent is screaming his lungs out, leaving scratch marks on the heavy oak door until he is dragged into total chilling silence. Amidst all this absolute horror, Penelope just casually goes back down. The surviving guys stare at her like she is the literal Grim Reaper. She gracefully folds her hands, asking to review the new protocols with zero panic. Dominic leans in, his lips brushing her ear to whisper a dark joke about his taxes. It is a masterpiece of psychological control right before our eyes. Here is a required truth to remember that when you build your emotional walls out of the Shifroenis to scorchate, you use your nebji fostusil full hard for the monsters guarding your forefront gates. Before Penelope can even process that Twit does dark intimacy, Dominic gets a buzz on his phone. The shift in his vibe is violently sudden. All that possessive warmth just vanishes, leaving nothing but a mask of pure lethal ice. He dismisses the boardroom with one breath, and those wealthy executives nearly crush each other scrambling for the door. In the heavy silence, Dominic drops the bomb. The bank freeze let his team track Sterling. When she quietly asks where he is, Dominic just checks the heavy steel of his piece and names a private hangar at Teterboro. The shiny corporate illusion is completely shattered. It serves as a raw lesson for all of us. You can dress your worst impulses in expensive designer suits, but the absolute beast inside never truly sleeps. It only waits in the shadows for the perfect moment to start hunting. The lens tracks Dominic as he turns his back to the table. He announces that Sterling is making a run for it with the encrypted drive and strictly orders Penelope to lock down the floor and stay put. A corporate boardroom is child's play, but a tarmac gunfight is absolute chaos. Yet Penelope pulls the wildest move ever. She steps away from safety, locking her icy eyes directly onto his. Her voice does not even shake as she reminds him that only she can wipe those financial codes. She demands to go exactly where he goes. Dominic just stares at her, the tragic irony heavy in the air. The boss did not force this woman to become a monster. He just handed her the keys to the dark energy she already had. We always love to blame the world for our dark side. completely ignoring how willingly we step straight into the raging fire. The camera catches the exact second he silently gives in to her demand. He does not even argue, he simply holds out his hand. Penelope grabs it, stepping right off the deep end into his violent, underground world. Next thing you know, they are ripping through the Lincoln Tunnel at 80 miles per hour, trapped in a suffocating silence inside an armored SUV. Penelope is balancing her laptop, her fingers attacking the keys like a frantic hacker. She knows Roland will dodge public networks to ping a local connection, to trigger her ultimate kill switch.
It is a defense mechanism we honestly all know too well. Sometimes burying yourself deeply in a massive task is the only way to survive the sheer terror closing in on you. Intense.
Hardcore focus is very often just pure panic wearing an incredibly clever mask. The sharp, metallic click of a fresh magazine itch sliding into Dominic's piece echoes loudly in the armored car. His eyes are totally hollow and detached as he orders Penelope to stay glued to her seat while he clears the hangar. She has to wipe that drive the exact second her signal hits. The crushing reality of the upcoming violence drops like a ton of bricks onto her chest. They finally pull up to Hangar 4B, where a sleek private jet is screaming on the tarmac. But fate loves writing a bitter plot twist, guys. Dominic is not the first one to the party. Too bally. Luxury cars are just sitting abandoned by the main gate, their heavy doors hanging wide open. We learned something super profound right here. No matter how fast you try to outrun your demons, the darkest will always manage to arrive exactly 5 minutes before you do. The camera violently snaps to Leo up in the front seat. Spotting those sketchy abandoned cars, he draws his heavy weapon in an absolute blur. It is the rival syndicate. Lorenzo Moretti has officially chosen the path of war. Dominic does not even flinch at this, coldly ordering his driver to just floor the gas pedal. They do not even tap the brakes. Tons of armored steel tear straight through the heavy chain link gate in a massive explosion of twisting metal. Before the dust air stellars, Dominic is out and moving, using the thick card doors as shields, while automatic gunfire absolutely shreds the morning air. Inside the ride, Penelope throws herself flat against the floor, her heart hammering out of her chest. We spend years making tiny, innocent compromises, only to wake up one day desperately dodging the very bullets we unknowingly loaded ourselves. Let us take a step back and really look at Penelope in this insane moment. She is totally consumed by the quiet poison of trauma bonding. She glues her frantic eyes to that glowing laptop screen, desperate to trick her shattered nerves by drowning in the cold logic of code and math. Outside her little glass bubble, Dominic is moving through the thick gunsmoke like a literal demon of vengeance. He is not a polished CEO anymore. He is an absolute apex predator, dropping an enemy enforcer with 2 flawless shots without even breathing hard. Through the cracked window, she finally spots Roland, crying helplessly against the fuel Jules drum clutching that silver briefcase. It reveals a deeply uncomfortable truth. The terrifying monsters we lie awake fearing are often the exact same ones standing right between us and absolute utter destruction. And the camera aggressively zooms in on the shivering, pathetic executive. Standing right over him is Vincent, the brutal heavy of the Moretti family. He mercilessly grinds the smoking hot barrel of his pistol directly into Roland's temple, screaming for the codes over the deafening roar of gunfire. Roland is completely broken, sobbing uncontrollably about his vanished millions, and this, guys, is exactly where the tragedy seals itself. Blinded by sheer animal panic, Roland flips open his laptop to check the stolen files, completely unaware he just pinged the jet's local network. Inside the SUV, Penelope gasps as the connection lights up. Her fingers smash the enter key like lightning, totally driven by raw survival. It is a tough lesson, but terror ruins logic. When pure panic takes the wheel, we basically hand the keys to our destruction straight over to the enemy.
Guys, the tension in this opening scene is literally off the charts. We have smashing the override
command, sweating bullets to prove her worth to the mob boss holding her hostage. The loading bar crawls at 34%. Outside, Vincent completely loses his mind. He brutally pistol whips Roland, snatches the encrypted drive off the wet pavement, and screams for his crew to retreat. 85%. Penelope is whispering absolute prayers to her monitor. Vincent turns to bolt, but stops dead in his tracks. Dominic is standing right there, aiming a loaded weapon straight at his face. It is a brutal reality check, honestly. You might think you are bold enough to snatch the ultimate prize, but blinding arrogance always makes you forget the heavy-priced tag waiting at the door. Notice how the death-defying gunfire does, leaving a terrifying silence, and Dominic and his enforcers step out of the smoke, trapping the survivors. With zero emotion, Dominic orders Vincent to drop the gun, but Vincent just smirks like an absolute clown. He holds up that stolen drive like a holy artifact, bragging there, holds the blueprint to destroy the entire syndicate. Inside the armored truck, Penelope watches her screen flash bright green. The wipe is totally flawless, melting the hardware into useless slag. Shaking, she taps the thick glass and gives Leo a tiny thumbs up. It is pure, dark poetry. Toxic pride will have you waving your winning hand in the air, entirely oblivious to the fact that someone hiding in the shadows just flipped the whole table upside down. Stick with me here because the plot twist hits hard. A terrifying smile creeps across Dominic. He drops his voice to a whisper and asks Vincent if he is really that confident. Vincent looks down. The blue light on the drive flashes red, spits a spark, and dies, fried from the inside out. You can literally see the panic wash over Vincent as he realizes his ultimate bargaining chip is just useless plastic. Dominic stares right through him, casually says to let Lorenzo know the audit failed, and pulls the trigger. One shot. Vincent hits the wet concrete, and his boys instantly drop their weapons in terror. It slaps you with a harsh reality. The exact second you think you finally outsmarted fate is the exact moment it rips the floorboards right out from under your feet. Roland sits on the bloody bleeding concrete, clutching his shattered jaw. He stares at the dead hitman while Dominic steps out of the shadows like the Grim Reaper. Scrambling backward against the heavy fuel drums, Rosen starts crying. He begs for his life, screaming about absolute loyalty to the Mafia. Dominic just looks down at him with zero emotion, like staring at a crushed bug. He quietly replies that Roland is neither loyal nor smart. He signals Leo to throw the guy into a soundproof trunk, where he will spend his final hours explaining every single stolen dollar. Dominic walks away, unbothered. It is a wild reality check. Toxic people will push your boundaries to the absolute limit, only to collapse and play the weeping victim the second you finally push back. You guys have to see the psychology in this next beat. Dominic yanks open the heavy steel door. Penelope is shaking so violently, she is digging her fingernails into her palms to keep from breaking down. He does not say a word. He pulls her out of the seat and wraps her tightly in his arms and burying his face in her hair. He smells like freezing rain and fresh gunpowder. And the absolute tragedy? Penelope holds on just as tight, pressing her face against the chest of a literal killer. This is the exact moment the steel trap snaps shut on her heart. The storm quiets down as they drive back to the penthouse. It leaves us with a brutal lesson. When you are drowning in sheer chaos, you will desperately hold on to the exact same anchor, alligator, that is dragging you straight down into the dark. Just look at the brilliant framing in this shot. City leads bleed through the massive glass windows, throwing freezing shadows across Penelope. She is totally swallowed up in a huge sweater, desperately seeking comfort after surviving a literal mafia war. The heavy door swings open and Dominic steps inside. He is scrubbed clean of the blood, dressed in dark wool, projecting a terrifying crawl that shattered her last emotional defenses. He hands her a glass of 25-year-old scotch, his voice a low rumble as he confirms the enemies are officially wiped out. You and I can see the profound life lesson hidden here. No matter how violently the world burns down around you, the relentless pulse of life simply demands that you pick yourself up and keep moving forward. The camera lingers on Dominic, his composure like absolute ice. He casually drops that they just bled their rivals for $15 million. Penelope stares into her drink, her knuckles stark white. She is desperate to anchor her mind to normal corporate business, but Dominic shatters that safe illusion. The original deal is completely dead. His voice drops to a dark whisper, revealing they are buying 3 clean shipping companies and she will draft the hostile takeover. Penelope slowly turns, the dim lighting catching the raw vulnerability in her eyes. Why would a massive mob boss trust a total stranger to rebuild his empire? Because real trust is never just handed over on a silver platter. It is fiercely forged in the scorching fires of mutual destruction. Freeze the frame right here to appreciate the tragic beauty of this moment. Watch how Dominic slowly takes the glass out of Penelope's shaking fingers. He frames her face with his heavy hands, forcing a suffocating and inescapable intimacy. Dropping his cold mobster mask, and he whispers that his entire life people have only ever seen the monster. It is a masterful, heart-wrenching play for sympathy. He tells her she is the only person brave enough to stare down loaded guns to save him. Her breath catches in the silence. She weakly protests that she was just doing her job, but he insists she was born for the shadows. The painful life lesson here. Sometimes the very people who finally recognize your hidden brilliance are the exact ones quietly planning to weaponize it against you. Notice the suffocating camera work as this psychological trap locks into place. Dominic leans in close, eclipsing her vision and cutting off her connection to the outside world. He murmurs that she spent her whole life shrinking herself down so mediocre men could feel powerful, vowing she will never be invisible again. The tragedy hits hard because Penelope actually starts crying. She finally feels seen after decades of hiding her genius. Dominic takes her broken pieces and turns them into his own dark religion. When she breathlessly whispers her surrender, the steel jaws of the trap snap shut. His eyes flare with a raw, terrifying, possessive fire. The crucial lesson we must learn. Never let desperate need for validation blind you to the absolute reality of a beautiful cage. Dominic claims he belongs entirely to her now, sealing their dark fate. He swears she will command the syndicate while he acts as the muscle, eliminating anyone who blocks her path. Their physical collision is desperate, shot with chaotic, overwhelming energy. Penelope grabs him, unleashing a lifetime of repressed hunger for sheer dominance. He crushes her against the cold glass, his massive frame blotting out the city lights. Then a brutal smash cut thrusts us exactly 6 months into the future. We are in a freezing, sterile boardroom, surrounded by elite financial predators waiting for their orders. This stark, cinematic shift delivers a brilliant point. Visible power can change hands in a fleeting instant, but unbreakable control is always quietly built in the shadows. The lighting is clinically white, stripping away any trace of that dark mob romance. There are absolutely no street thugs left. This high-end boardroom is Penelope's modern army. She commands the space, looking like a lethal weapon in a custom emerald suit. The camera tracks her slow, deliberate pen, taps against a thick dossier. Her voice is freezing as she confirms the tax shelters that make them a legitimate empire. The corporate predators erupt into applause. But I want you to look closely at her cold, hollow expression. That is the true cinematic, the tragedy of this story. Penelope believes she finally conquered the monster, but she has entirely mutated into him. It leaves us with a haunting truth. The most inescapable prisons are the invisible ones we happily build for ourselves. The camera pulls back for this breathtaking final frame. Dominic lounges deep in the shadows, indifferent to the clapping executives. His eyes remain violently fixated on Penelope. Beneath the marble table, his heavy hand closes around her thigh. It is a calculated, possessive strike meant to remind her exactly who built the cage she sits in. But watch her reaction. Penelope does not tremble at all. A wicked, triumphant smirk touches her lips before she effortlessly goes back to commanding their empire. That terrified accountant from the first act is dead and buried. In her place sits a ruthless apex predator. The final lesson from this ending is incredibly grim. Sometimes, the exact toxic environment designed to break your spirit becomes the very forge that teaches you how to conquer the entire game. Before the screen goes pitch black, we seriously need to unpack the absolute madness we just watched. If this toxic mind game kept you glued to your seat, smash that like button. Tell me in the comments, when did your jaw actually drop? Was it Penelope going completely feral and shattering that guard's face? Or Dominic Stone Cold dismantling his rival without a single blink? Share this with anyone who lives with revenge drama and subscribe so we can keep tearing into these insane plots. As the credits roll, take this real piece of advice. When your own world spins into total, do not just blindly react. Panic is a total rookie mistake. Shutting your mouth, stepping back, and truly reading the room is not just playing defense. It is literally the sharpest weapon you have. The final lesson from the story is about leadership and transformation.
This is not an act of violence.
It is the decision to trust Penelope's knowledge and give her real authority. Instead of treating her as a temporary helper, he recognizes that she can rebuild his organization. Penelope then creates a new financial team made of hungry, brilliant people rather than arrogant insiders and nepotism-based executives. This part of the story offers an educational lesson about leadership. Strong leaders do not only command people, they create systems where capable people can succeed. Dominic's empire becomes stronger when he listens, adapts, and allows someone more skilled in finance to lead that area. Penelope's leadership is also meaningful because she does not simply replace one corrupt person with another. She changes the culture. She exposes theft, demands compliance, hires based on merit, and builds a cleaner business structure. This shows that real leadership is not about titles, fear, or appearances. It is about responsibility, competence, and the courage to reform broken systems. In education, business, and community life, this lesson is highly relevant. Many organizations fail because leaders protect pride instead of truth. They ignore talented people, tolerate corruption, or reward loyalty over ability. The story encourages a different model. Listen to evidence, promote capable people, and remove those who abuse power. Penelope's success proves that one person with integrity can influence an entire organization when given the chance. The broader lesson is hopeful. Even systems built on fear can begin to change when intelligence, courage, and ethical leadership are placed at the center.